My guitar gear journey started out like how it does for a lot of us. I wanted to play rock and roll guitar, and to me that meant you had to have a Les Paul and you needed to play through a Marshall stack, or at least that's what Guitar Center made me believe. And of course, every time I go to the Guitar Center, I'd stare upon the wall of Marshall stacks with envy, just dreaming about when I get to bring one home. Kind of like when my wife goes to puppy adoption events and wants to bring all of them home. But back then, I didn't know anything about guitar. I just knew that all the guitar legends that I was watching and wanted to be like were playing through Marshall amps. I didn't know that the Marshall half stack I was eyeing at the Guitar Center was actually a solid state Marshall, and that's why it was way more affordable than other Marshall amps. And if you had told me that it was a solid state amp, I wouldn't have known that that's anything to be concerned about. To me, an amp was an amp. So one day, my usual Guitar Center employee who helps me out comes up to me and tells me, hey, that amp you're playing on is a solid state, not so great. What you want is a tube amp. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, but what's a tube amp? And then he says, let me show you. Tube is the old school tech all those records you listen to were actually recorded with. All these tubes here make your guitar sound more rich, warm, and dynamic. Next thing I know, I'm plugging into a Fender Blues Jr. and I am just absolutely, positively, 100% hating it. All I had was this clean tone, the amp was way too loud, and it didn't even say Marshall on it, just lots of problems. Clearly, I didn't know anything about anything because that Fender Blues Jr. is a killer amp. What I was missing, besides good taste, was that effects are a different thing than amps. To me, and I think most guitarists when they first start out, every amp is essentially supposed to be a Line 6 Spider. Any clean tone, distortion, delay, reverb, chorus should be in and come from the amp. Wrong. Time jump. I'm auditioning for the high school worship ministry team, and in addition to trying to figure out what a C sharp minor 7 and an F sharp minor 7 is, I'm also trying to understand what this word all the worship guitarists keep throwing around is. Tone. And also what a pedal is. Well, I was eventually able to get those chords figured out. What's been the journey of a lifetime is the pursuit of great guitar tone. Not just generically great guitar tone, but how do I get the sounds in my head to come out through the guitar? And that's something that I think is a perpetual work in progress. I've done a ton of research on pedals and have experimented with different ones, put my pedal board in several iterations. I've tried out different tube amps and settled on this boutique tube amp that I still use today. If I could boil down everything I learned about guitar gear in the first 7 years of my playing, it's that tube amps are definitely better than solid state and way better than digital anything, and pedals are always better than multi-effects. And the more boutique the pedal, the better it's gonna sound because, the audience can definitely tell the difference between your TS-808 and your TS-9. I'd say I hit my stride with guitar gear in 2017. I had my MX-11 VS15 amp dialed into my liking, and I had my pedal board here all routed through this RJM Mastermind PVC, which made programming sets a breeze. I had fought the good fight. Now it was time to enjoy. In 2017, I achieved my dream of going on tour, and everything I knew about guitar gear was turned on its head. Number one, taking amps on tour is avoided by many artists. Sometimes it's a stage volume thing, sometimes it's a money thing, sometimes it's a reliability thing, and sometimes it's all of the above. Number two, the pop world of guitar playing does not care about your guitar tone like the way the leagues of guitarists on the internet would make you think. As long as you can play and your tone is not horrendous, you're fine. You don't need all three Strymons ripping into stereo tube amps to please a music director. All you really need is a good lead sound, a good clean sound, and then maybe a good ambient or verb tone, and you're covered for the most part. And number three, there's this thing called a Kemper that pretty much every gigging guitarist had or was switching to. Basically, I had been trained to believe that digital was bad and analog was good. Now I was being told that Digital is good, and analog, while still good, was definitely not preferred for live. My gut response was, like a lot of you diehards in the YouTube comments, saying, I'll never go digital, it has to be a tube, the audience can tell the difference live, end of story. Well, after fighting digital for 3 more years, I finally caved, mainly because I had to. I was doing a music director role at a church that was AMPS, which I thought was kind of strange at the time because it was a bigger church and they definitely had room off stage to have ISO boxes for amps, but I decided to play nice and I tried out a Strymon Iridium and I kind of hated it. No, that's a lie. I actually loved it and thought it sounded pretty darn good. So I started doing research on amp pedals and I landed on the Walrus Audio ACS1. To the ACS1, by the way, because when that came out it was so popular, and then UA came on the scene and stole the spotlight, and then since Tonex has come out, my goodness, they've sucked up all the air in the amp pedal room. Anyway, the ACS1 was great for me, and it's the reason I put my pedal board in stereo. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I could have a different amp sound on the left and right channels. And while it wasn't the same, I thought at least I get to use my pedal board, which I spent so much time and money on. It didn't feel like a complete waste. Like most things guitar gear, I soon came to learn that my using an amp pedal was not good enough for the digital diehards in the industry, and I was still having the usual reliability issues with cables going down and whatnot on my pedal board. You know, the typical wear and tear stuff that happens when you check a pedal board multiple times on an airplane.
Oh, lovely. This pedal board is not quite as I left it.
And my pedal board was large and heavy. So while my whole guitar rig was contained on this thing now, it still wasn't the most convenient for tour. And guess what? Music directors in the pop world were still pushing me to go full digital, and so I gave in and I bought a quad Cortex to get all those "do you have a modeler" people off my back. And while I didn't love it initially, I've grown to thoroughly enjoy this unit. So now my understanding of guitar tone and guitar gear has kind of come full circle. Rather than having separate pedals and amps for sounds, I want all my sounds to come from the amp alone, or in this case, the modeler alone. Now we're living in the middle of the all-in-one unit revolution, and it seems like every day another guitar YouTuber posts about the next latest and greatest modeling unit. It's super simple. The Tonex pedal, the Neural Quad Cortex. I know I am guilty of doing that too, I get it, but the one thing I don't really understand is how many times I hear on YouTube, this unit is the future of guitar modeling, this update is the future of guitar modeling, this amp pedal is the most realistic amp pedal ever, it's the future of amp pedals. And I've just got something to say about all that. All these modelers, amp pedals, multi-effects, plugins, and other digital guitar gear are not the future of guitar, they're the present. Certainly the technology is only gonna get better, but this idea that the digital guitar era is in the distant future is not correct. We are in it right now. The fact that I can make a quad Cortex rig that sounds identical or near identical to my pedal board and amp rig is just baffling. You told me that that was gonna be the case any time in my first 10 years of my guitar playing, I would have just laughed in your face. Well, it's happened, and it doesn't matter how many of you comment that you can tell the difference live. Even if that's true, most people can't, and most people don't even care. Think about it. When you go to a concert, do you just stare at the guitarist the whole time, studying their rig, judging their choices, sizing up whether they're a better guitarist than you or not? Well, actually, you might be thinking that because you're probably a guitarist watching this video, but the rest of the concert goers are most likely not thinking about those things. While I do have a special place in my heart for pedals and amps, the truth is these all-in-one units are the new pedals and amps. This is the stuff we're gonna look back on in 20 years and be like, oh whoa, is that a first edition quad Cortex from 2024? This isn't me saying that unless you jump on the digital train now, it's gonna leave you behind at the station. Guitarists are always gonna use pedals and amps, and that's totally fine. But what I am saying is, if you don't give digital a true and unbiased try, then you're gonna miss out on some gear that could probably make your workflow far more efficient. That's been the biggest thing for me. I needed an all-in-one solution for live that would make me feel like I wasn't compromising my tone too much. But honestly, the more I've used the Quad Cortex, the more I've loved the sounds and the efficiency, and I just find myself using it at home all the time too. I actually just leave it out on my desk so I can easily loop in my real tube amp with a captor for silent recording. I can use it in tandem with some pedals, or maybe I can just add in some funky effects that I don't have on my pedal board. Let me know in the comments below what you think the actual future of guitar rigs is. Leave a like on the video before you head out and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll catch you next time.